When I grow up, I want to work hard and fix things. I only want to chop life and enjoy one rich man's money. Oh.
3 girls shared one mattress in a room with no ceiling fan and a roof that leaked every rainy season. They swore they'd never let money change them. That promise was easy to make when they had nothing. This is the story of Doosuur, Ebiere, and Mfoniso, 3 friends from the same street, the same struggle, the same dreams. What happened between them next, nobody in their town saw coming. Let me take you back. In a small quarter of Makurdi, behind the market where the smell of dried fish mixed with diesel smoke, 3 girls grew up sharing one mattress on the floor of a single room. Their names were Doosuur, Ebiere, and Mfoniso. Doosuur was Tiv, quiet, with hands that were always busy, fixing things, breaking things apart just to understand them, staring too long at machines. Ebiere was Ijo, loud, funny, the kind of girl who could turn a funeral into a comedy show if you let her talk long enough. Mfoniso was calm on the outside, but if you looked closely, her eyes always seemed to be calculating something, measuring people, weighing what they were worth to her. They were 14 when their mothers, all 3 widows, all 3 struggling, sat them down under one roof and said the same thing different ways. This life will not be kind to you. Choose wisely. Doosuur chose to apprentice under a welder named Tezongwe, a rough man with burnt scars up his arms who didn't smile, didn't joke, and didn't tolerate laziness. 6 years she stayed with him. 6 years of blue sparks flying into her eyes at night when she closed them to sleep. 6 years of calluses thick as leather. 6 years of people calling her the girl that does man's work, like it was an insult instead of a badge. Ebiere and Mfoniso laughed at her for it. You want to smell like iron and sweat your whole life? Ebiere used to tease, adjusting a wig she borrowed from a neighbor. Meanwhile, me, I will marry a man who owns 3 cars before I turn 25. Mfoniso never laughed loud like Ebiere did. She just smiled, that calculating smile, and said, Doosuur, beauty is currency. You are wasting it on iron. Doosuur never argued back. She simply said, when the currency finishes, what will you have left? Nobody paid attention to that question. Not then. By the time they turned 19, the 3 friends' paths had already split so far apart that people in the neighborhood stopped mentioning them in the same sentence. Doosuur had her own small welding shed behind her mother's compound. Just a shed, a generator, and a signboard she painted herself. Doosuur Metal Works. Business was slow. Some evenings she went to bed with an empty stomach because a customer promised to pay and never came back. But she never stopped. She fixed gates, generator frames, burglary-proof windows, anything that came her way. No job too small. Ebiere and Mfoniso, on the other hand, had found their own kind of workshop. The clubs on the outskirts of town where politicians' boys and contractors' sons spent money like it grew on trees. Every weekend, the 2 girls dressed in borrowed heels and rented confidence, squeezing themselves into VIP sections, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, waiting to be noticed by men whose faces they'd seen on billboards and in newspapers. And one night, they were noticed. His name was Chief Ochuku, Urobo man, thick gold chain, voice like he was used to people listening whether they wanted to or not. He owned 3 fuel stations, a fleet of trucks, and, though nobody knew this yet, a lot of debt hiding behind all that shine. He took a liking to Ebiere first. Then, when Ebiere introduced her sister Mfoniso, he took a liking to her too, in a different, quieter way. He didn't choose between them. He didn't have to. He had enough money, he thought, to keep both flames burning without either girl noticing the other was catching fire from the same match. For 2 years, Ebiere and Mfoniso lived like queens. New phones, new apartments paid for, not owned, though neither of them thought hard about that detail. Designer bags that those who were passing them in the road in her stained work overalls would only ever see in adverts. The 2 friends stopped calling Doosuur. When they saw her in the market, they'd wave from inside tinted cars and drive past, laughing about something that had nothing to do with her, but somehow always seemed to be about her. Doosuur never resented them. That's the strange part. She simply kept working, kept sending small money to her mother, kept saving. People in the neighborhood whispered that she was foolish, that she was wasting her youth on grease and metal while her mates were enjoying life. An old woman once stopped her in the market and said right to her face, "My daughter, beauty does not last forever, but this life you are living will finish your beauty before its time. You should learn from your friends." Doosuur just smiled and kept walking. But that night, alone in her shed, she cried. Not because she doubted her path, but because being called foolish again and again by people who thought they understood a life they'd never lived cut deeper than anyone admits. Now, here's where the story stops being simple. Because up to this point, you're probably thinking you already know how this ends. Hardworking girl wins, lazy girls lose, moral of the story, roll credits. If life worked that cleanly, nobody would need to tell stories about it. Stay with me, because what happens next changes everything you think you understand about these three women. And before I show you, subscribe now, because the twist coming up is the reason people say this is one story you cannot watch halfway and walk away from. It started with a phone call Ebiere wasn't supposed to overhear.
She had gone to Chief Ochoko's mansion earlier than expected. A surprise visit, she told herself, though some part of her, some quiet, suspicious part she'd been ignoring for months, wanted to catch something. And she did. Standing outside his study door, she heard him on the phone, his voice low, urgent, nothing like the loud, careless tone he used with her. The EFCC has already frozen 2 accounts. I told you this contract money was not clean. If they trace it back to the fuel subsidy scheme, all of us will. The line went quiet. Ebiere's chest went tight. She had heard subsidy scheme on the news before, the kind of story that ended with men in handcuffs on the front page of newspapers, their families disappearing from public life overnight. She stepped back from the door, but not quietly enough. Chief Ochoko opened it and found her standing there, face pale. "How much did you hear?" he asked. And for the first time in 2 years, his voice held something Ebiere had never heard from him before: fear. She lied, said she heard nothing. He didn't believe her, but he let her go that night, watching her leave with eyes that had suddenly turned calculating, cold, like he was doing arithmetic on how dangerous she'd become to him. Ebiere didn't tell Mfoniso what she heard, not at first, because, and this is the part that will surprise you, Ebiere had her own secret, one she had been keeping from Mfoniso for over a year. She was pregnant, 4 months gone, hidden under loose gowns and clever angles, and the child wasn't Chief Ochoko's. There was another man, a younger one, a mechanic who worked near her old neighborhood, someone she'd been secretly seeing whenever the loneliness of being a rich man's extra woman became too much to carry alone. She loved him quietly, in a way she never loved the chief's money, but she was too deep into the lifestyle to walk away, too used to the soft beds and the fat allowances. She told herself she'd leave eventually, once she'd saved enough. She just needed a little more time. Time she was about to run out of. Mfoniso, meanwhile, was dealing with her own storm because, unknown to Ebiere, Mfoniso had discovered something too, something far more dangerous than an overheard phone call. She had found documents in Chief Ochoko's home office one lazy afternoon while he slept off an afternoon of drinking. Documents with her name on them, not as his girlfriend, as a signatory on a shell company account she had never agreed to be a part of. Her identity, her BVN, her signature forged, all tied to accounts now under EFCC investigation. She realized, cold sweat running down her back, that Chief Ochoko had been using her, using both of them maybe, as fronts, innocent-looking young women whose names could receive and move money without drawing attention. If this scheme collapsed, and it was already collapsing, Mfoniso wouldn't just lose her lifestyle. She could go to prison for something she never even understood she was part of. 2 friends, 2 secrets, both terrified, neither telling the other the full truth, and both in their panic doing the one thing that would blow their world apart completely, going separately on the same night to confront Chief Ochoko. Now, pause here for a second, because this is where the story takes its sharpest turn, and I need you to really sit with what happens next. Ebiere arrived first, around 9 p.m., ready to demand he help her leave quietly, give her enough money to disappear before the scandal broke, before her pregnancy showed, before her whole carefully built life turned to ash. She found the gate unusually quiet, no security guards outside like normal. She let herself in through the back, the way she always did, and found the main door slightly open. Inside, she heard voices, Chief Ochoko's raised and another man's unfamiliar, hard, threatening. She froze in the hallway, hidden behind a large potted plant, and listened. You think you can hide the money and disappear? You think we don't know you moved 40 million through those small girls' accounts? The strange man said. Chief Ochoko's voice cracked, actually cracked, the first time Ebiere had ever heard that fear turn into full desperation in that once booming voice. I can pay you back. Give me 2 weeks. You had 2 weeks, 2 weeks ago. Ebiere didn't see what happened next. She heard it. A crash, a struggle, a single gunshot that seemed to swallow the whole house in silence afterward. She stood frozen in that plant for what felt like an hour but was probably only 90 seconds, her hand pressed over her mouth, over her stomach, over the child she hadn't told anyone about yet. Then she ran, out the back gate into the dark street, her heels in her hand, running like her life and another life inside her depended on it, because it did. She didn't call the police. She didn't call anyone. She went straight to the one person she realized in that moment of pure terror she actually trusted. She went to Doosuur. It was almost midnight when Ebiere banged on the gate of Doosuur's mother's compound, sobbing, shaking, barefoot, her expensive dress torn at the hem from running through bush paths to avoid the main road. Doosuur, who hadn't spoken more than a greeting to Ebiere in almost 2 years, opened the door without a single question about where she'd been all this time. She simply pulled her inside, gave her water, and waited. He's dead, Ebiere kept whispering. Chief Ochoko is dead. They killed him. They will kill me too if they know I was there. Doosuur, calm the way she always was, the way 6 years of standing over dangerous machinery teaches a person to be, asked only one question. Does Mfoniso know? Ebiere's face changed. Mfoniso was supposed to meet him tonight too. She told me this morning. I forgot. Doosuur, if she went there... They both understood in that terrifying moment that Mfoniso might have walked straight into that house after the men who killed Chief Ochoko were still inside. Or worse, that Mfoniso had been there before Ebiere even arrived. Now, quick pause before I tell you what actually happened to Mfoniso, because you need to brace yourself for this. Let me remind you, if this story has your heart racing right now, that's exactly why you need to subscribe. Because these true-to-life folktales, the ones with real twists, real consequences, real karma, that's what this channel lives for. Hit subscribe now so you don't miss the next one. Now, back to Mfoniso.
Mfoniso had indeed gone to the house earlier that evening, but she'd arrived even before Ebiere, around 7 p.m. And unlike Ebiere, she hadn't hidden. She'd walked straight into Chief Ochoko's study, documents in hand, demanding answers. What Ebiere and Doosuur didn't know yet was that Mfoniso, calculating as ever, had already taken precautions, suspecting for weeks that something was deeply wrong with the business Chief Ochoko kept dragging her into. She had quietly photographed every document with her name forged onto it. She had shown copies to a lawyer, a distant cousin who worked in a small firm downtown just 2 days before. That lawyer had advised her urgently to report everything to the EFCC immediately to get ahead of the investigation instead of being buried by it, to prove she was a victim of fraud, not a willing participant. So when Mfoniso confronted Chief Ochoko that evening, she wasn't there to beg. She was there to warn him that she was about to report everything, hoping, foolishly, that the threat alone would make him fix things, clear her name quietly, the way rich men always seem to fix things. He hadn't taken it well. Their argument had turned ugly, loud enough that Mfoniso, frightened by the sudden violence in his voice, the way he grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise, left the house shaking around 8:30 p.m., just 30 minutes before the men who killed him. She didn't know, walking home that night, how close she had come to being in that house when it happened. She didn't know Ebiere had nearly walked into the same danger less than an hour after her. Both girls, unknowingly, had escaped death by the width of a closing door. By morning, the news was everywhere. Prominent businessman found dead in suspected cult or gang-related killing linked to fuel subsidy fraud investigation.
Photos of Chifuchuko's mansion, taped off, filled every local WhatsApp group and Facebook page in town. And within days, as EFCC investigators combed through his financial records, 2 names kept appearing on flagged accounts, Ebiere and Mfoniso. This is the part where everything the 2 girls had built collapsed, publicly, painfully, in front of the very people who once envied them. Mfoniso, because she had already gone to the lawyer, because she had already begun the process of clearing her name before the story even broke, was eventually cleared of criminal involvement, though not before her photo was splashed across local news as a person of interest, not before her family disowned her out of shame, not before every neighbor who once admired her designer bags now crossed the street to avoid her. She was innocent in the eyes of the law, but innocent doesn't undo humiliation. Innocent doesn't give back 2 years of her life, or the fiancé she'd secretly been planning a future with, a young banker who broke off her engagement the moment her name hit the papers, unwilling to attach himself to a scandal. Ebiere's situation was messier, more painful, more human, because she hadn't just lost her lifestyle. She was 7 months pregnant by the time the investigation dragged to an end, and the mechanic she loved, the father of her child, had heard enough rumors, some true, most twisted beyond recognition, to walk away from her too, convinced she was somehow part of a criminal syndicate, too afraid to be dragged into a mess he didn't create. She had no rich man anymore, no mechanic, no apartment, evicted within a month because it turned out even that had been paid for through the very accounts now frozen by the EFCC. She had nothing except a growing belly and a phone full of numbers that stopped picking her calls, except one number. Doosuur never once said, "I told you so." Not once, not even quietly, not even to herself. When Ebiere showed up at her gate a second time, this time not for one terrified night, but with nowhere else in the world to go, Doosuur simply made space. She moved her welding tools to one side of the small room she'd finally saved enough to rent behind her shed, and she made a bed for Ebiere on the other side. "Why are you doing this?" Ebiere asked one evening, watching Doosuur weld a broken generator frame by lantern light because NEPA had taken light again. Doosuur didn't look up from her work. Sparks flew orange against the dark. "Foolishness is refusing to help someone who needs it, not refusing a shortcut," she said. "You people called me foolish for choosing iron over easy money, but iron doesn't disappear when the market crashes. Iron doesn't run away when police start asking questions. I built something nobody can take from me. That's not foolishness. That's the only wisdom poor people like us are allowed to have." Ebiere cried that night, and Mfoniso, who had also quietly returned, humbled, changed, no longer wearing that calculating smile, but something closer to genuine humility, cried with her. For the first time in years, the 3 friends sat together in one small room, not because life had been kind to any of them, but because it had stripped everything false away and left only what was real. Now here comes the part of this story that nobody who called Doosuur foolish ever saw coming. 6 months after Chifuchuko's death, as his empire was liquidated to pay off debts and settle EFCC fines, the fuel station properties, the trucks, even parts of the mansion itself went up for auction. A construction company won a government contract to convert one of the seized properties, a large warehouse Chifuchuko had used for illegal fuel storage, into a proper registered fabrication and logistics hub, the kind of project that would create dozens of jobs in the community. The construction company needed welders, skilled ones, reliable ones, who could handle heavy structural work on a tight government deadline, with government inspectors watching each joint and seam. They put out a call for contractors in the area. Doosuur, after 6 years of unglamorous, unnoticed work, after 6 years of being called foolish, applied, and was the only local welder whose previous work, inspected personally by the site engineer, met every safety standard on the first try. Every other contractor who applied had cut corners somewhere, somehow, over the years. Doosuur never cut corners because Doosuur never learned how to cut corners in the first place. She didn't just get hired. She was given the entire structural welding contract for the site, and within that single project, she earned more money than she had made in the previous 4 years combined. She hired 2 apprentices, then 4, Within a year, Doosuur Metalworks wasn't a shed anymore. It was a registered company with a proper workshop, standing ironically close enough to the very warehouse that once belonged to the man who destroyed her two friends' lives. She didn't gloat. She didn't rub it in anyone's face. Instead, she did something that shocked the whole neighborhood, something that turned this story into the kind people still tell today when they want to teach their daughters about patience.
She gave Mfoniso, whose sharp mind for numbers had never actually been the problem. The men she trusted it with were a job managing the company's accounts and contracts, and she gave Ebiere, who by then had given birth to a baby girl, a small room at the back of the new workshop and a job answering calls, keeping records while her daughter slept in a cot nearby. "I am not doing this because I forgive easily," Doosuur told them both one evening. The three of them older now, tireder, wiser in the particular way only hardship teaches. "I'm doing this because I remember what it felt like to be looked down on. I don't want anyone, even people who once looked down on me, to feel that forever. Everybody deserves one real chance to rebuild." That single decision, to extend a hand instead of a closed fist, is why years later, when people in that Makurdi neighborhood talk about the three girls who grew up sharing one mattress, they don't talk about who was rich and who was poor, who chose iron and who chose men in clubs. They talk about what happened after the fall. They talk about how the one they called foolish became the one who rebuilt what Karma had burned down. They talk about how Ebiere's daughter grew up watching three women, her mother, her mother's friend, and the woman she came to call auntie, running a company together out of what used to be a dead man's storage warehouse. Karma, in this story, didn't come as fire and thunder against Ebiere and Mfoniso. It came quietly, dressed as consequence, teaching them the hard way that shortcuts always demand a toll eventually. Sometimes paid in shame, sometimes in shattered relationships, sometimes almost in blood. And Karma for Doosuur didn't come as sudden riches either. It came slowly, patiently, the same way she built everything, one weld at a time, one honest job at a time, until the very system that once mocked her had no choice but to recognize her worth. Some people watching this will say Ebiere and Mfoniso got off easy, that they should have suffered longer, that forgiveness came too quickly. But that's not how real life, real African families, real communities actually work. We fall, we shame ourselves, and if we're lucky, someone we once looked down on reaches back to pull us up instead of pushing us further down. That's not weakness. That's the deepest kind of strength there is. So, if you've been sitting somewhere right now being called foolish for choosing the slow road, the honest road, the road nobody claps for, let this story remind you. The shortcut always looks faster in the beginning, but it's called a shortcut because it cuts something short. Usually, painfully, it cuts short the very future the person thought they were running toward. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you of someone you know, maybe even yourself, don't just scroll past. Subscribe to this channel right now, turn on that notification bell, and tell me in the comments, which one of the three friends reminds you most of your own life right now? Because trust me, more stories like this one, real, raw, twisted with the kind of karma that keeps you thinking long after the video ends, are coming. And you don't want to miss a single one.